Okay, let's draw a sequence diagram using the Visible Analyst tutorial file. Now, a sequence diagram is one of two interaction diagrams, and they are related. You have the sequence diagram, which is the first one we'll do, and then you have, in UML 2.0, you have the collaboration diagram, which actually has been replaced with the so-called communication diagram. But nevertheless, we're going to stick with the collaboration diagram, as that is what is supported using Visible Analyst. Now, in the tutorial file, you might take a look at the definitions on the first page that talk about the components of sequence diagramming: object, class, lifeline, activation, message, self-call, object deletion, a return message or call, a condition, and an asynchronous message. The vast majority of those are important to understand. So the first thing you want to do is set up a new file, a new project file. The test file that comes with it actually has a lot of objects and entities and diagrams preloaded into it, and we don't want to mess that up. So it's a good idea to say new project, and you can call it whatever you want. Call it sequence diagram tutorial. Now that's just the name of the project. You'll also have to name the diagram as you draw it. Let's stick with, well, none of these are really pertinent to it right now. But what you can do is, we're not going to do a class diagram. Come down here and you say sequence and say OK. And portrait, you want portrait because it's going to be long up and down. Standard workspace is fine. None of the rest of this stuff matters. So just say OK, and then you'll immediately get into your drawing space. Okay, and we're going to be using the toolbars. We're going to be drawing objects along the top, and we're going to be extending lifelines and activations and sending messages back and forth. So let's begin. So we're going to add an object. Let's put it right about here. Note that you can add both the name of the object and the name of the class. We're not going to name the object, we're going to name the class instead. And the class is, for the first one, is application entry window. So let's put that in. And say OK. It says, do you want to create it? You say yes. Okay, now if we go back into selection mode and we take a look at this, note that there are two colons preceding this, and this is the reason why. The protocol, the convention is object name, colon, colon, class name. Okay, so we didn't give it an object name, we just gave it a class name, so we don't see the object name, which would precede these double colons. Okay, so there's application entry window. Then let's put in the rest of them. And when you're done, get into selection mode, and you might just move them around a little bit. It should look something like this. This one is application entry window, that's the name of the class. Application, that's the name of the class. Drive test, name of the class. License, and DMV database. Okay? So now we're going to add activation symbols. These are the lifelines. They automatically extend downward from the objects. And the way you read a sequence diagram, a sequence diagram as an interaction diagram is telling you the sequence of messages that are sent from one object to another. And you read it left to right and up to down. That is, the messages, the sequence of the messages will begin with this one and will go left to right. And as more messages are sent, we'll go down the lifeline. Okay, but first we have to add activation bars. And the way you add the activation symbol, it's the second one No, that's not it. It's this one. It's the activation. So this is a little bit tricky. So what you have to do, I'll show you how to do the first one. You go down here, and somewhere when you're in that mode, right about here on the application entry window, you click. Okay, and then you can resize it a little bit. And I recommend you do that. Maybe just kind of stretch it down a little bit. And that's pretty good. And then we're going to add activation bars to the rest of these. And when you're done, it'll look something like this. Okay, the positioning of these activation bars are important because we're going to be passing messages, and you want the message to start at an activation bar on one class or object and to end on an activation bar in another one. So the positioning of all these is relatively important for this particular sequence diagram. Okay, now we're going to add some object deletions. And in order to do that, here's the object deletion. We are going to set 3 of these, the application, drive test, and the license objects, to delete once their activation bars end. And the way you do that is very simple. You go into the object deletion mode by clicking on this icon and just click right under the activation bar on that one, on this one, and on this one, like that. Deletion means that the life ends. The object no longer exists once you have passed those sequences of messages. Okay, so it'll look something like this when you're done doing that. So at this point, before we begin adding procedure calls, let's save this, the diagram, and let's see, we'll call the diagram DMV Sequence Diagram. So we'll come up here, File, we will say save the diagram as DMV Sequence Diagram. Next video, we'll add procedure calls and we'll finish up this DMV sequence diagram.